Joining me now is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor of Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, great to have you here, but what about this unbelievable betrayal, and I don't think there's any other word for it, of Israel, with Joe Biden saying it will stop supplying Israel weapons if they push ahead with their offensive on Rafah? I mean, this from the same guy who said once upon a time said cutting off aid to Israel would be preposterous, and it looks like a political quid pro quo. How transactional and boneheaded is this?
It's political, James. And keep in mind, Donald Trump was impeached for much less than this when he temporarily froze aid to Ukraine because of corruption. This is bizarre, but this is political. And here's what Joe Biden's trying to do. He's trying to have it both ways. There are elements of the Democrat Party that want to support Israel, and there are elements of the Democrat Party that do not want to support Israel. And he's trying to do both. Keep in mind, the Democrat support for the aid package that Biden is now withholding was tremendous in the United States House of Representatives and the Senate. But on the other side of the equation, he does have these protesters and college campuses, young voters threatening not to vote for him. And let's not forget, we've talked about it in this program before, the block of Palestinian American voters in some swing states, including Michigan. So, as is so often the case, he's trying to have it both ways, and he's getting killed on both sides for it.
Yeah, but that's the whole nature of this foreign policy. It dates back to the Obama days, this idea that we're going to try and make Iran legitimate and give them kind of a sphere of influence in the Middle East, which, of course, was totally insane to anybody who'd ever read a book about the subject. But just on the question of these protests, how much are they actually now playing into the hands of Donald Trump? I know that in 2020, when we had the Black Lives Matter protests, those really played into the hands of the Democrats. But this now round of protests, it seems like every election year we get them, this seems to be something that's going to turn off the mainstream.
Yeah, I had a fascinating conversation with a group of my Democrat and Republican friends in Washington just this week. And what it seems to remind everybody, of course, nobody remembers it anymore because of how long ago it is, but in terms of an academic sort of perspective, reminds everybody a lot of 1968 and the Vietnam War protests and how that disrupted the Democrat Party at that time and gave us two elections for Richard Nixon. When law and order became an issue, the Republicans did very, very well. That's sort of the way it feels here today, that even swing voters are looking at these protests going, you know what, I'm all for free speech, but anti-Semitism is a bridge too far. And if Biden's not going to do anything about it, and he's not, I'll consider voting for Donald Trump. So you're already starting to see that filter through. The better comparison is not 2020, it's 1968.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And also, there's also this other issue of turnout, too, because, of course, the Democrats have always relied so much on those young voters coming out. But, I mean, if a large block of young people are now calling him Genocide Joe, well, that's a problem for the Democrats, isn't it?
It is. Keep in mind, I taught a class this past semester at the University of Chicago, and the Democrat Party was handing out flyers calling him Genocide Joe and calling on the Democrats to not have their convention in Chicago. Keep in mind, where was the Democrat convention in 1968? Chicago. So if history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it does rhyme. This is a major, major problem for the Democrats, and it is hurting Joe Biden politically without question.